Hi guys, welcome back to Piscator UK, and this video is going to be a follow-on video from a previous video, which was a beginner's guide to the 3 most popular fishing lines available to anglers. And one of the fishing lines that I went through was Braid. Now I said there was a lot of properties within Braid that really appealed to anglers, and one of them was diameter, its strength, but Braid also presents a few issues to anglers. It's not difficult to use, but it can be challenging, especially to a beginner. So some of the challenges beginners find when using Braid, and even anglers with some experience have challenges with using Braid, is they'll get things like wind knots in their line, they'll get backlashes on their reels, fluff ups, bird's nests, whatever you want to call it. These are all challenges that face beginners and experienced anglers. Because Braid is so fine a line, most of us use what's called a rubbing leader or a shock leader. And the shock leader or rubbing leader is either made of monofilament or fluorocarbon. There are many reasons why anglers actually use a rubbing leader or shock leader when they're using Braid. And it's because of the qualities within Braid that they need to use a shock leader or rubbing leader. And some of these qualities are, obviously, its diameter. It's a very fine line. It has no or zero stretch in the line. And also it's not got many abrasion or anti-abrasion qualities within the line. So they need a rubbing leader or shock leader to add protection to the line. And most of this protection to the line is during casting. Now when we attach a leader to our mainline Braid, this is when some of the issues start happening that I've already mentioned. I.e. we see wind knots in the line, we may get backlashes, fluff ups, bird's nests in the reel, and it can all come down to how we attach the leader to our mainline Braid. Now obviously we attach it using certain knots. Now there's many knots out there and some are better than others. Now I'm going to go on and do the FG knot later on in the video. Now the reason I'm going to show the FG knot is because it is one of the strongest knots when tying a leader to Braid, but more importantly is its profile. It's one of the smallest profiles that you can use. So why is the profile so important? Well, if you've got large knots, which is joining your leader to your mainline Braid, as that knot goes through the guides of your rod, this can alter the dynamics of line coming off your reel. So before I go on and do the FG knot, I just want to share with the beginner anglers and those that are new to the sport what I mean by the dynamics of the reel, and in particular how the line comes off your reel. In this case it's a baitcaster, it's no different to how the line comes off a multiplier reel, slightly different to how the line comes off a fixed spool reel. But I just think it's important for beginners to understand what is actually happening with your reel when line's coming off it, and what the effects of a knot going through the guides of your rod has the effect on your reel, which causes some of the problems that we were talking about. Now, as I said, this is a bait casting reel, but it works in the same way as any other multiplier reel, as in the line is wound onto the spool in a certain direction and it comes off the spool in the opposite direction. Now I've attached the rubbing leader or shock leader to my mainline Braid using a uni to uni knot. Now the reason I used a uni to uni knot is because it's not one of the smallest profile knots. It is a very strong knot, but it's not one of the smallest profile knots. And a lot of anglers use the uni to uni knot because it is so strong. But because it's not the smallest profile knot, this knot can actually be where the problems start occurring in your line, like the wind knots and the backlashes on your reel. So on your initial cast, whether you're casting a lure or a lead, doesn't matter what it is, it's the weight of your lure or lead that puts the force onto your spool and it starts pulling the line off your spool. Now once that weight starts heading towards its direction, i.e. in part of the cast, your knot starts travelling through the guides of your rods and a lot of the times it misses the first guide. As you can see there, it's going straight through, not touching. But once it starts going through the other guides of your rod, it starts hitting off the other guides, and because it starts hitting the guides of your rod, this is putting friction on the knot, and the knot obviously starts smashing through the guides as it's going through, and it does this all in a split second as the line is travelling at a great rate of knots. So it's this slowdown of the initial cast that causes the problems with your reel, i.e. you start getting wind knots in your line and you may end up with a backlash or a bird's nest because the line is slowing down as it's travelling through your rod guides. Now, as the knot travels through your rod guides and it starts to slow down, your spool is already in free fall, as in the line is coming off at the same speed as the initial cast, but it's not the same speed as the knot that's travelling through the eyes of your rod because they've already been slowed down due to the friction. And it's this that causes the problems. So as you can imagine, this is coming off really fast, but the knot that's going through your rod guides is already slowed down. And this is when you start getting loose coils in your mainline braid, and sometimes you can end up breaking the line because you'll get a loop that wraps around either your first rod guide or your second rod guide or even your top eye of your rod. So this is why it is so important to use the smallest profile knot that you can possibly use when attaching your leader to your mainline braid, because the smaller profile creates less resistance as that knot is passing through your rod guides, which in turn prevents any loose line because the line coming off your reel is coming off faster than the line passing through your rod guides because the knot is hitting off each guide as it passes through them. The dynamics of a fixed spool reel acts in many ways like a multiplier reel or bait casting reel, as in the weight of the lure or the lead that you're using, which takes the line off the reel. Everything happens in a similar fashion. On your initial cast, the weight of your lure or your lead pulls the line off the spool of your reel. Now obviously the line comes off a fixed spool reel differently than a multiplier reel because the line comes off in coils rather than pulling the line off the spool and the spool's actually spinning in the direction that the line is coming off. But it all works in the same way, and that is on your initial cast the weight pulls the line off your reel at a certain speed until the knot starts passing through or the guides of your rod, and it's the passing of the knot going through your rod guides in the same way as using a multiplier reel that starts slowing down the line due to the friction of the knot passing through the guides of your rod. But on the initial cast, the line is still coming off your reel initially faster than the line is passing through the guides of your rod. And again, this is what causes many of the problems that we see when using braid. Now just one point on a fixed spool reel. There are certain fixed spool reels that are specifically designed when using braid, and they'll have smoother edges on the edge of their spool, which makes the line come off your spool a lot smoother. And there's many other differences, but that is one of the main ones. And it's just worthwhile when you go and purchase a reel, making sure that it is designed, or the spool is designed for the use of braid. Now there's many ways in which we can use a rubbing leader or shock leader when we're fishing with mainline braid. And there's many reasons why we use a shock leader or rubbing leader when we're fishing with mainline braid. And I'll just run through a few of those reasons. Now, when we use a shock leader or rubbing leader, we can use them in many different lengths. We can have short leaders or we can have long leaders, which are maybe twice the length of the rod that we're using at the time. And one of the reasons we would use maybe a long leader and we actually wind the leader onto the reel a few turns is because we're fishing a line that is so fine and it is so light that it enables us to fish really heavy weights. Obviously, if we up the weight of the leader, we can fish a really heavy weight, and we can fish, say when you're maybe beach casting, surf casting, you can fish a heavy weight, which will enable you, because you're fishing such a light line, will enable you to cast long distances. And obviously with fishing that light line, there's less resistance in the line, less resistance in the water if you're fishing in a heavy tidal stream, and obviously there's less resistance travelling through the air on the cast. Now obviously there's zero stretch in braid that we use, and because of that the shock leader does exactly that. It's called a shock leader for a reason, and it takes the shock out of the initial cast and it allows you to put some force into that cast, which if you didn't have a shock leader, your mainline braid could obviously break. Use a shock leader obviously as a rubbing leader because it adds additional abrasion resistance, which most braids don't have. It doesn't take much for your mainline braid to break, it just needs to touch a rock. Fishing over a reef, fishing over rocky ground, and your mainline braid can be damaged if you're not using shock leader or rubbing leader. And also, like I mentioned in the last video about the line itself, because there's zero stretch in the line, if you're using a rubbing leader or shock leader, that shock leader gives you a bit of flexibility, i.e. the line will flex rather than be, no resistance, because it has zero stretch in the line. And that's another reason why we use a shock leader. So guys, I'm going to go on now and do the FG knot. I just want to say one thing about the FG knot, and that is many anglers shy away from the FG knot, and they shy away from it for a few reasons. One, it can be time consuming to do if you're unsure how to do it or you've not had much practice in doing it. Two, some anglers find it difficult to tie, again probably because of lack of practice, and some anglers think it's quite a finicky type of knot, and in certain situations, if your hands are really cold, you're outside obviously fishing and the weather's raining, it's wet, miserable, windy, then it's not a type of knot that you want to do in these conditions if you haven't had much practice in tying the knot. But like anything, practice makes perfect. The more you practice a knot, the quicker you will be actually tying the knot. And the method I'm going to show you in tying the knot is relatively simple, and again with practice you will be able to speed up the tying in the knot and you'll have more confidence in tying the knot. Hey guys, let's get on and do the FG knot. There's a few different variations and techniques in how to do the FG knot, and some of them is just putting the coils of the braid with the leader just using your fingers. But I find that doing that you don't get the coils of the braid around the leader tight enough where you can get an actual good grip of the line when you start cinching up on both lines. So my preferred way to do it is under pressure. Now many people will have the line under pressure in one direction, so if you can imagine this line here is coming from a reel through my rod tip, and other people will use the pressure on the line by putting the tag end in their mouth. Now rather than put it through your mouth, all I do is I take the tag end of the braid, pinch it with my finger and pinky, and I wrap that round my pinky in the groove of my pinky until you get the amount of line that you need to start the knot, which is probably about that much. So tag end, this end here, coming off my rod tip. In this case I've got it on a vise, but on the rod tip is probably easier because it's a bit of flexibility in the line but still under pressure. Take your tag end of your leader, probably about 6 or 7 inches is all you need, and you cross that over on top of your main line braid. Then what you want to do is pinch that with your forefinger and thumb over your main line braid, and you want to start doing your loops above, under and over, and below, under and over. And you want to do that a total of 14 times on each side, above and below your forefinger and thumb. So the first couple of turns I'll do in slow time just to show you what you're trying to achieve. So first turn, under, over and pull. Keeping pressure from your rod tip and pressure below the knot. Then grip the knot and go below, under and over. For your second turn, making one turn above, one turn below. Let's do the second one, above, under and over, below, under and over, and then carry on doing that a further 12 times above, 12 times below. I'll carry on to do the knot. There you have your 14 turns, and that is the start of the FG knot complete. I've kept pressure on the top and bottom all the way through, allowing me to put enough pressure that you've got tight turns on the FG knot. You can then take the pressure off now that you've completed that. Grip the FG knot with your forefinger and thumb. Remove the tag end from your pinky. Take the slack off your reel if it's attached to your rod. And now you can finish the FG knot. Now at this stage, this is when the FG knot takes on many variations on how you finish the FG knot. Some people finish the FG knot just with half hitch turns, which is really simple to do. And all you need to do is flip your tag end over your mainline braid and your tag end of your leader. Through the loop. And that is your first half hitch. And you can just pull down on that, cinch down on it really tight for your first half hitch, and you can carry on doing several half hitches around both lines, mainline braid and the tag end. Now I don't like to do half hitches because I just don't trust them enough that it's a tight enough knot. So I'll take off the half hitch, and what I'm going to do is finish the FG knot using a knot called the risotto knot. And the risotto knot resembles a single uni knot, and it works much in the same way as a uni knot, as it tightens down from either end, but this really finishes the FG knot much neater and much stronger, I feel. So lay your mainline braid over your tag end leader. Take your tag end of your braid and just flip that over both your mainline braid and your tag end of your leader. And just with that turn that's going over both lines, just neatly bring it together like so, and grip that with your forefinger and thumb. Now with your tag end, you just want to create a loop. So that the loop side of your tag of your mainline braid is going over both lines. Now what you want to do is wrap your tag end of your mainline braid around both lines 5 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, all 5 loops are going round the mainline braid and the tag end leader going towards the FG knot. Now at this stage, just take your tag end of your mainline braid, lay that over your FG knot and pinch that with your forefinger and thumb. Now what you want to do with this loop is you want to reverse the loops and go back over the mainline braid and the tag end leader going away from you. That's 1, 2, 3, and you want to try and keep the turns as neat as possible, making sure not to overlap. 4, 5, and that was actually 6 turns to make them both even. Now at this stage you want to take up the slack on the tag end of your braid, which will take up the slack of this loop. So just hold the turns in your forefinger and thumb of your right hand. Slowly pull down on your tag end of your mainline braid. And as you can see, the loop is much smaller. You just want to ease that down gently at this stage, which is pulling the coils together from the top towards the FG knot. Slightly pull on your mainline braid and that will take out any loops that's created as you're pulling towards your FG knot. Now at this stage you're almost ready to tighten down on your risotto knot. And before you tighten down on any knot or cinch down on any knot, make sure to lubricate the knot with some saliva or water. Because it's for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to lubricate at this stage. So take your tag end of your mainline braid, wrap that round your left hand, take your mainline braid on the opposite end and wrap that round the hand, your fingers of your right hand. And obviously after lubrication you want to cinch down on the knot as tight as possible. Take your leader, wrap that round your left hand, take your mainline braid, wrap that round the fingers of your right hand, and to really cinch down on it guys, I would recommend using a glove or a bit of dowel that's maybe got some soft coating on it so it doesn't damage your braid. And you want to really cinch down on mainline braid and your leader. Again, just to cinch down on your tag end mainline braid. a final pull on your leader, and your mainline braid. And that is the FG knot complete. Final trim of your tag ends. And because the knot is so tight, you can trim down your tag ends really close to the line. Trim the tag end of your leader, and again you can trim that really close to the end of your risotto knot. No need to burn the ends. And as you can see, the profile in the knot is really small, it's really neat, and this is the perfect knot for passing through the guides of your fishing rod, which creates less resistance than any other knot that's out there. Very strong, and as I said, it's worthwhile practicing this knot to get it right, and this will prevent you getting into difficulties and getting wind knots, backlashes on your reel, fluff ups, and even crack offs on your line.